Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the Inside Spurs channel. Hope we're enjoying the week leading into the coronation and looking ourselves in some pretty decent sun today. I'm a little bit less sunburnt today, which is always a good sign that I've decided to be an adult for once and actually look after myself. Today we're talking about a man that came out of the blue. Really, I didn't really expect this guy's potential manager. A potential manager, sorry, terrible English. And I'm intrigued by him. I'm fascinated by him. And I'll give you my thoughts and feelings if I think, it'd be a good appointment, if something that I might like to see, and so on. So if you haven't really looked at the thumbnail properly, or you can't understand, you don't really know who that man is next to me, that's former Liverpool, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich central midfielder, Xabi Alonso. So little quick backstory as Xabi Alonso as a player before I talked about him as a manager. So Xabi Alonso started at Real Sociedad, obviously had a few loans through his youth time, but his first move was from Sociedad over to Liverpool and had a pretty good time in Liverpool. This is when obviously in the sort of early to mid 2000s, he played centre mid with Steven Gerrard. It was a hell of a partnership. He was a player that really sort of, I think, developed Gerrard quite a bit. It was a player that Gerrard realised he didn't have to sort of play. He didn't have to sort of take over a team. Xabi Alonso could dictate play for him. After a few seasons at Liverpool, he then had a move to Real Madrid, where he was kind of crucial for them, in my opinion. He played the holding mid role. He had players come in and here and there. Players like Sami Khedira, that was a big one at the time through centre mid. Michael Essien, Lassana Diarra. But in reality, Xabi Alonso was the main guy that held that midfield down. Playing against prime Barcelona, where Real Madrid didn't really hold onto the ball all that well. Xabi Alonso was one guy that could play through lines. He could play against that Barcelona team with quite good ease, actually. After quite a few successful seasons with Real Madrid, he won everything, if I'm honest, under Real Madrid. He then moved to Bayern Munich, and ironically, Toni Kroos had moved kind of the other way. And obviously, Toni Kroos is still there now, balling out. But again, under Bayern Munich, he was fantastic. Obviously, he was getting a bit on now. The age was catching up with him. But he was still a very key player for them. And he left on top. And for some footballers, I think they get long in the tooth and don't leave on top. Xabi Alonso didn't do that, which was quite impressive, honestly. The most iconic photo of him retiring, where he's just walking off in the distance, carrying his boots, just giving up the peace out, like a wave sign sort of thing, And he just oozes class, and he just looks so cool, As a manager, he got his first big job at Bayer Leverkusen. So Bayer Leverkusen are a good, solid team in Germany. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And he's really got them playing some very, very nice football. What I'll talk about is some of the stats that he's had at Leverkusen as their manager. He's been there now a little while. We'll sort of look at as to the style of play that he's developed there and just kind of do what we did with the Nagelsmann video, but now with Xabi Alonso. So, Xabi Alonso now, he's manager of Leverkusen since October 5th, 2022. In that time, he's managed 31 times, winning 17, drawing 7, losing 7. So 7's kind of a thing for him, right? They've averaged 2.1 goals a game and conceded 1.29. Points per match, 1.87, so 1.9 sort of thing, right? I'll talk a little bit about that goals per game situation because he has rectified quite a bit of the early issues that he had at Leverkusen. I'll explain why when it comes to his style of play where he's defending, depending the situation, right? Obviously, he's only been there really now, what you think, October, 6-7 months. So he's not been there all that long, okay? He spent time as youth coaches and B team coaches in Spain, but this was the real first job for him. First and foremost, looking at some of those stats, you may not sit there and go, that's not impressive when you buy Leverkusen. But Bayer Leverkusen, to be frank, have kind of been a pretty below average team in Germany for a little while, They had some runs of success, but they also finished mid-table a few times. So I think it's a good job, really, when you're coming into the season without, without the summer transfer window, without the summer pre-season, you're coming in October where you've just missed that time. I think he's done quite a decent job for them. In regards to what he sort of brought into the team in terms of the style of play, so under the previous manager, they really played a four-back at Leverkusen, 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, whatever that might be. Under Xabi Alonso, they go more of a three-back situation with two attacking wing-backs, okay? So there's a few players in this team that Spurs have been linked to, okay? There's a couple of players in this team that I would like us to get linked to a little bit more, which I'll talk about a little bit myself. But he uses Joel Frimpong as his right wing-back, who he's a man in demand. Man United really want Joel Frimpong. He's a very good right wing-back. He used to play at Celtic, if you might remember that. But he's also got Piero Hincapié playing left wing-back, and obviously a player that I've spoken about on this channel before, player that Spurs have been interested in a little while, who plays centre-back and sort of left-back and, well, evidently now left wing-back. So in this system that they sort of play, the idea is to play through the lines. Xabi Alonso wants to build up from defence through the midfield into the attackers. If they bombard the centre of midfield, he wants to play wide into Hincapié and obviously into Frimpong. Hence why Frimpong's been Player of the Month in Germany a couple of times this season. He's been a very key player in the German league this year. The issue that he had with this formation, when it came to sort of starting to implement this formation, was he has a bit of a zonal marking situation in open play. So what I mean by that is, if a player was to come into, let's say the left winger was going to come into the Joel Frimpong area at right wing back, what Joel Frimpong is supposed to do is actually mark that man until he leaves his area and goes into a different area. So let's say Joel Frimpong was marking a player and he goes across into centre-back where Jonathan Tah is, right? He's gone all the way across. Basically, Frimpong knows where that blade of grass is. As soon as he moves over that blade of grass, he's no longer my deal. He's no longer my problem. He would then go back to his area and mark that zone. Then Jonathan Tah would pick up the player coming over the left winger, for example, and maybe the striker goes out to left wing. Therefore, Joel Frimpong would pick up the striker as he moves, and Jonathan Tah would swap with him, right? If that makes a bit of sense. It was the first time I've ever sort of seen that being implemented. I like it. I don't actually hate it. It's accountability that know that a player, if he's moving, is going to be travelled with. And you've seen through the years, Alex Ferguson using Park Ji-sung as a guy who travels with the opposition's most attacking player. And Herrera did it for Man United, actually. This is post-Fergie, on Eden Hazard when he was absolutely flying for Chelsea. So it's a fairly common use practice, but this is not as extreme. Those guys, let's be frank, if Eden Hazard was going to the toilet and Herrera was going in there to make sure that he went, sort of thing, right? This is different. You're only going so far of the way before someone else picks him up. The issue that he was having when defensive situations was that it then allowed a lot of space in behind. So let's say Frimpong travelled a little bit with the left winger, maybe the left back bombs all the way over the top and allows him to get in. And that's the issue they were having, the balls over the top. He's started to rectify it, from looking at some of the numbers, he's rectified it. And it depends on the actual formation of not only the opposition, but also his team. So in a defensive situation, they might use a 5-4-1 or a 5-2-3, depending on the situation, right? So if those fullbacks, let's say you're playing a team that doesn't have a very attacking fullback, let's not to pick on anyone, but Aaron Bissaka isn't the most attacking fullback in the world in terms of he has good energy, good enthusiasm, doesn't really deliver much, right? In that system, you might find that Bayer Leverkusen under Xabi Alonso may play a 5-2-3 because he thinks, well, if we can get the ball, we'll ping it in because this guy's happy to go forward. We don't worry about him too much. Let's attack on the other end. If he was playing, let's say, Bukayo Saka, 5-4-1, let's drop two men in behind, make sure that he doesn't hit us over the top or create any damage for us, right? You sort of see where I'm going with that. It's quite two extreme examples, but off the top of your head, you work with what we've got off the top of your heads. So in that system, it allows to correct a lot of defensive issues, but also allows you to spring an attack, okay? If he plays a 5-2-3, the 2-3 side of things, so forget the defence and the wing backs, there's two central midfielders and the three front men, he plays them very narrow. So you can't play through the centre. So defensively, what I mean is, if you've got a team that can build out from the back, who can play through the centre, you basically take away those options. They play wide, and that's when you have two fullbacks who can defend one-on-one in space. It allows you to actually start to dictate a bit of play. So, for example, let's say Destiny Udogie was an absolute defensive stalwart, and Pedro Porro was an absolute defensive stalwart, which I don't think they are, but just hypothetical. That would allow the central midfielders, let's say it's Bentancur, Højbjerg, for example, and the front three, let's say it's Son, Kane and Kulusevski, they would become more of a unit through the midfield, leave the two wing-backs on an island to defend themselves, and go from there. What you'll find is if Xabi Alonso was to be the manager, we'd probably play a 5-4-1 because the wing-backs, be that they are quick, defensively can get at, okay? So that would be probably an idea that you probably find we would play a 5-4-1 more than a 5-2-3. It just really depends on the team. I think that's the best way that I would describe it, okay? So in the build-up play, we talked about under Nagelsmann, how he likes to play through at least one of the centre-halves being the main distributor into the pivot player. Xabi Alonso is a little bit different. He uses, actually, one of the central midfielders sometimes dropping into the centre-back area, spreads centre-backs completely out to completely cover the back line, moves his attacking wing-backs, both of them on. Sometimes Frimpong's the furthest guy forward. You know, that allows actually a lot more space through the centre, because then you'll find that you've got two centre mids sitting in there. Let's say we're playing a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3. You normally find is one of the attacking options might come a little bit more centrally. It might even be their main attacker might come a little bit centrally. Allows the central defensive mid to drop into the three at the back. Moves the three completely apart. Then you play through. Sometimes he does allow actually the centre-half to kind of play it into the centre midfielder, depending on who you're playing if they're sitting back, who then dictates the play from there. Kind of like what Xabi Alonso used to do, ironically. So that, I think, was quite interesting. But the fullback usage is the most important thing in Xabi Alonso's system. Pin the opposition defenders back. If you've got Frimpong and you've got Piero Hincapié right up the pitch, proper pinning the guys back. It doesn't matter that maybe Piero Hincapié's not going to, outdo you for pace or run by you with his, his skill. Frimpong can. That's the thing that with the right wing back that's so interesting. He can beat a player. So that's why when he sits so far up the pitch, and the defenders obviously go, well, I've got to mark this guy because he's my opposition number. I've got to go back with him because he's coming up so far. That's why you need competent midfielders who can dictate play and pick a pass over the top to allow Frimpong to run in, to allow Hincapié to run in. That might be Florian Wirtz, that might be Andrich, that might be Demarai. That would probably say the front three. You're not going to really find a Moussa Diaby or Azmoun try and do that, but that's the main three that you find in terms of creativity. But that allows so much space, because if you're then spreading a whole back line completely across the pitch, because you're allowed to dictate play through the centre, then it creates space for a Wirtz, it creates space for Azmoun or a Diaby to come drop a little bit deeper and run at a back line instead of having to deal with midfielders in their way. And that's the thing I find very interesting. They build up quickly. They can build up play very, very quickly, and pinning the defenders back is absolutely massive for that, okay? So his team are set to play a very positional game, okay? So a positional game that creates space centrally, and more specifically for his main players. Like I said, a Diaby, a Florian Wirtz. We all know those two guys are their best players, in my opinion. You might look at a Frimpong being up there as well, but let's talk about the attacking options. They're probably the best players. The aim is to find them. That's the thing. We'll play it around, we'll knock it about, but the idea is to find those two in space. Get it into them. Then it allows them to play to maybe Frimpong or a Hincapié and get the ball into box towards the Azmoun. But the idea is that if you get the ball into those number 10s, is to get going to goal directly. Don't dilly-dally that sometimes you see Kulusevski do, sort of turn, I'll run a little bit towards, maybe diagonally towards the corner, I'll cut back, I'll pass it back. No, get it, go, use it quickly. That's the idea, right? With Alonso, they have the ability to go quick and go bang. But for him, I would probably say they build up a bit slower, a bit more methodically, but they have the ability to really be explosive. Moussa Diaby is one of the most explosive players in the world, in my opinion. Plays on the right wing, left footer, really dynamic, really, really dynamic. And that would be important for us. If we're looking at Son, for example, former Bayer Leverkusen player, really dynamic, really explosive. We can get the ball into him and have him running at the defence. And that's the important thing. Get Son, get Kulusevski in space, get Kane on maybe on the back line. Where he used to score 30, 35, 40 goals in a season, get him on the back line, use it. Because ironically, I was talking to someone at work, and actually, unfortunately for him, he's a Spurs fan as well. And I said actually it was so nice to watch Kane's goal against Newcastle. I didn't not watch the game in terms of it's not nice to watch the game, but in terms of his goal, how he beats the player and thumps it in, and that reminded me a lot of Kane under Pochettino at Spurs. This would allow Kane to be more like that. Don't get me wrong, Kane's ability to pick a pass is fantastic, but if we could use that sparingly, where we can go, he's on the back line, he drops, bang, and he does that every now and then a team can't plan for that. And when they do want to go for him sort of directly in terms of let's stick a player on him, well, then that creates that space that he's going to always pin them back, run the other way, get the ball, get a pass off, could work an absolute treat, right? The use of this is what it says under Leverkusen when they look at Palacios or Demarai. Now, Palacios and Demarai play in front of Andrich, who's the sort of centre defensive midfielder, right? The idea is to play alongside him in a regular feature for those two. The idea is to have three guys there in midfield, normally. So 3-5-2 you could go with. The idea is to kind of get that system in place, to have continuity. I think that's one thing with Spurs this year. We were like, well, there's Bentancur and Højbjerg. Does Bentancur and Basuma work? Does Basuma and Højbjerg work? We didn't really know. Let's be frank, it was Bentancur and then everyone else. That's the way it worked, right? The idea is to have more of a structured system in there. The idea is they can be defensive, yet attacking. And that sums up Bentancur very beautifully. Can be defensive, can dig in, can sit in, but they can get the ball and drive with it. And I think that will be really crucial in a system like a 3-4-3 under an attacking manager to say, look, we are going to need that. We may have a centre defensive mid that are going to defend and be locked down, but we need a guy who's going to be able to really move with the ball. And Højbjerg's passing ability sometimes can be average. I don't want to be mean about it, but it can be quite average. Bentancur is going to link up the player in a much more effective way. And that's what these guys have. Now, Andrich and Palacios and Demarai will always be able to get the ball to their front men. And that's the important thing, okay? So what I would say is not only did Xabi Alonso come in, change a formation, change a system, change a style of play, he brought in a new ethos under Leverkusen of creating players and making them better. Florian Wirtz is a better player. Moussa Diaby is a better player. Demarai, Andrich, Hincapi, Frimpong. List goes on. They've all become better players under Xabi Alonso. You can see it in the way they play. You can see it in the confidence. And you can really just see it through just as their time has been at Leverkusen. Now, on to the main question of, would I want Xabi Alonso at Spurs? Do I see him being successful? For me, him not having even a full season as a manager in a top 5 league is my biggest red flag. It's not his fault, obviously. He has to be able to get the job for it to work. And had this been maybe a year in advance, maybe Conte stayed an extra year and it just didn't work out. And that summer it was going to come around that Xabi Alonso was available. He's got Leverkusen as a top 4 team. Each time he's playing the manager. Finished in the top 4 in his first, not even full season, but then in his full season, he's actually finished first. I'm well on board and keen for that. I think it would work. I think he'd be a very good manager, develop a style of play, plays a system that we play now. So you already know the system quite well. He just wants to change and make tweaks to it. Defensively, he wants to make a tweak to how we defend and things like that. You can see it working. I just think he needs a little bit more time. And it's one thing I said about even someone like Roberto De Zerbi, is that he's not been a full manager in a top league, in reality, for a full season. They've only had, Xabi Alonso's only had a January transfer window. What does he do in a full transfer window? What happens when he maybe loses a player? Does a Florian Wirtz leave this summer? Or does a Moussa Diaby leave this summer? How do you replace? How do they improve? I'd expect Frimpong to go in the summer. How do you replace? How do you improve that person? And you can kind of see how that works, right? For me, that's what I want to sort of see from Xabi Alonso, is that next level progression where he takes Leverkusen from maybe being a 4th, 5th team to breaking into that top 3 of Leipzig, Dortmund and Bayern Munich. I know Union Berlin this year have been quite solid, but again, they're quite brand new to the situation. Leverkusen, you always think of being sort of that 4th team in Germany, maybe alongside a Mönchengladbach, Schalke back in the day. What he has there is a fantastic club who will be patient with him, will give him a lot of time. And he's showing the results on the pitch. Not to say, you look, he's scoring 2 goals a game. You know, you're showing that you're creative. You're showing you're an attacking team. The fans love that side of things. You know, fans love it. As Spurs fans, we love attacking football. We haven't had it in a little while, and you know we could love it. I just think it's just that little bit too soon with him. And it's the same that I feel with Xabi. It's that little bit too soon with him. You know, people don't want Ryan Mason, and I just think, you know, maybe he could do with getting a job elsewhere and building up. Because he could become a Gerrard or Frank Lampard where, it goes all right for a little while and then it totals off. And we don't, you know, that's the issue that I have with that. I would like an established manager in a top 5 league, maybe has won something, but also has the adaptability to create a system around a team. That's obviously Nagelsmann, for example. Or if you want to really create a style of play or develop a team ethos, a club identity, then obviously you could have a potential Enrique situation. But anyway, guys, that is the end of the video today on Xabi Alonso. I quite enjoy making these videos, actually, and talking about these managers that maybe people don't know a lot about. I mean, we know Xabi Alonso as a central midfielder, and hell, he could still probably play in the Spurs team right now. But a lot of people don't know what he's like as a manager. And I'm going to do a few more of these, all the while that, you know, we haven't got the manager, we haven't got director of football. Where do we go with this? I mean, it's come out today that, you know, the shortlist has been confirmed. They've done the due diligence. They're sort of now sifting through it all. I'm going to continue to try and make these videos. You know, we've got other managers that I want to talk about who are quite new on the scene or people don't know a lot about. And they are exciting. You know, we'll sort of see in these videos coming up what I think of them and what, you know, you might think of them very differently. But guys, that's the end of the video. Hope we're all well. Obviously, if you like that video, drop a like. Tell me your thoughts and feelings about Xabi Alonso. Other than the fact he's got a great beard and, you know, something that I wish I had because I don't have that. Drop a subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button if you're new. And obviously hit the bell notification for more videos to come. Anyway, guys, that's the end of the video. Look after yourselves and I'll see you all very, very soon. Take care, lads.